Secretary Paulson's meeting with those hedge fund managers raises questions about what government officials can and should say about market-sensitive information. It's an issue that's grabbed the attention of the top Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Iowa's Chuck Grassley. He's standing by with our chief Washington correspondent, Peter Cook. Peter?
Mark, thanks very much. I am here on the Hill with Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it. And what is your reaction to our report on Hank Paulson and this meeting with hedge fund managers back again, pre-crisis, right before Fannie and Freddie were taken into conservatorship?
I think Secretary Treasury, now former Secretary Paulson, is a person that would not intentionally do anything wrong. I think that the strange thing about it is that on 3 or 4 occasions prior to July 21st, he said that it didn't look like the federal government was going to do anything. And so then the question arises, why in a different environment he would say, yeah, it's pretty certain we're going to do such and such. I don't say that there's any bad intention on his part in that, but what it does is it doesn't put him into a particularly bad position because there's no laws violated if he were to say almost anything, but it puts the people that were in the room in a very serious situation, because if they use that insider information to trade, then they are violating the laws. So it's kind of a sad situation that, first of all, he changed his story for that group from 3 or 4 other appearances, including an appearance before Congress, and what he told the hedge fund group. And then the second thing is the situation that they were in, that they wouldn't dare trade on that. And if they did trade on it, they could be violating the law.
As a lawmaker with oversight over some of these federal agencies, don't you want federal regulators in times of crisis to be able to engage with market participants like Hank Paulson did in this instance?
Well, if you're going to assume that everybody that's out there is honest, but I know in my own office, occasionally somebody will get a call, or is Congress going to do such and such? Or sometimes I don't get those calls, but people on my staff get those calls. And so it goes on a fairly regular basis, because if you're on Wall Street and you can get an inside and a leg up on somebody else, you want to do it. I mean, that's the way the marketplace works. From this standpoint, though, I'd give you an example of people that are monitoring the Fed action. The Fed is notorious for not letting information out on time until a period of time has passed. So people are trying to get information ahead of time. I think that the more transparency you have in government, and the people's business ought to be public, then the less problems you have with the questions you're asking me.
What about going forward? Do you think it's time to make a brighter line there for government officials in terms of disclosing material, non-public information? Should Hank Paulson have been prevented from being able to do this in the first place?
I'm not going to make a judgment on that. I think it's something that Congress, in our oversight capacity, in regard to the SEC, the CFTC, and a lot of other agencies, as well as cabinet people, to investigate and see what needs to be done. I wouldn't make a hasty judgment based upon the last 2 days of having one story involving one person, Secretary Paulson. I just don't think it'd be wise for me to say yes or no or draw a line right now.
Yeah, there have even been questions about here in Congress. There was a 60 Minutes report a few weeks ago about, again, members of Congress being able to trade off non-public information, and some proposals, not only in the House but here in the Senate, to prevent that from happening. What are your views on that?
If there's a special exemption for members of Congress, as a person who got the Congressional Accountability Act passed in 1995, where for 6 years prior to that, Congress had exempted itself from 15 different laws, and I got us covered by those laws now. It's kind of embarrassing for me that somehow, unless this came along after 1995, that I missed that opportunity. But I don't know the law specifically exempts Congress from that, or that there's just nothing in any place in the law that affects any public official.
So you would support this legislation going forward? Now, Scott Brown's going to be introducing something.
Well, I think I would have to, based upon the tradition that I established and the precedent I established in 1995, making sure that there aren't 2 laws in this country, one covering Capitol Hill and the rest covering everybody else in the country. I think there can only be one set of laws in this country, and Congress, as employers, have to be affected by it as well.
All right. And really quickly, wanted to get your take on one other issue, and that is the departure of Barney Frank on the other side of Capitol Hill. Longtime Democrat, haven't agreed with you on a whole host of issues. What do you make of that? What does it say about Congress right now that veteran members of Congress are leaving at this point in time?
Well, I'm really surprised that he's retiring. And from the standpoint of my disagreeing with him, I'd still have to say he was an effective legislator, even if I disagreed with most of what he was saying and doing in those 32 years. But here's where I think that it does show something, that the tea leaves out there are showing a tremendous Republican victory coming up 12 months from now, and he didn't want to be seen in the minority anymore in Congress, and probably more than being in the minority, being in a minority with a Republican president.
All right. Listen, Chuck Grassley, we appreciate the time as always. Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, the top Republican on the Judiciary Committee.